Hello, 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 everyone. It's Cheryl. Welcome back to Heirloom Afternoon. It is Tuesday, and that means it is time for Heirloom Afternoon. I hope you are all doing wonderfully well. It is a incredibly rainy, kind of terrible day outside today for 2222. Today is one of those fun palindrome days of the year, which I think is really cool. Plus, it's Tuesday, so it's all twos on Tuesday here on Heirloom Afternoon. My friends, we have the most amazing fun time that we're gonna cut into the German Tuftwork that I have been working on the last two episodes of the show, and I'm very excited to show you how this has all come out. I have switched it to a smaller hoop because I thought I was going to bring it with me on an airplane, but there's a little story there. Sorry, it is still super dry, even though it is raining like crazy outside. It's super dry in our house. So you can see I've gotten a new design here also that's been made on our background, and I have a lot to talk about when it comes to this German Tuftwork slash Amish Stumpwork. So I had initially thought that I was going to take this project with me on the airplane when I just recently traveled to Texas. And at the last second, I decided not to bring it with me because I remembered at the last minute underneath all of these stitches is a metal like thingamabob, and if this had gone through my not my checked luggage but my non-checked luggage, and they saw this underneath, I think they would have considered this a dangerous enough implement to make me abandon the work at TSA. So I chose not to bring this with me on the airplane because I didn't want to have to give it up. And again, I remembered it at the last moment that metal thingamabob is underneath there. So that would have been, to me, a heartbreaking, because these templates I ended up getting from the UK, and they were quite expensive. And so and that's because they are super vintage. Okay, they are not new, and getting another set would be really difficult and really expensive. So I'm super glad that I remembered at the last moment that this was not something I should take with me on the airplane. Now, today we are going to be cutting into this piece and seeing how our stitches come out. And so I'm pretty excited about that. The other thing you may be noticing is, Cheryl, it seems quite dark in your studio today. And that is because all of our brand new lights have failed and they needed to be sent back. So we have new lights coming. And so please bear with us while we have these technical difficulties. Jerry's absolutely right. I would be bringing all those ninja stars onto the airplane. Good thing I didn't bring the big one, right? That would have been really sad. And like I said in previous episodes, finding these has been somewhat difficult, and also finding a complete set has been difficult. All of that to me meant that these would be really, really hard to replace, especially since, these are stamped with the patent information on here, and I still have a lot more research that I would like to do on not only this technique, but also this, you know, these templates. And so it would have been really terrible for me to have had to lose this in TSA. I think it would have been fine in my checked bag, but for working on this on an airplane, probably not such a great idea. So the other thing is that I have been really, really pleased with using this tapestry size needle in doing this technique, and also working with the tapestry wool. So if you are allergic to wool, I'm sure you can use acrylic yarn. This yarn weight should be on here. It does say that it is virgin wool. It's DMC. Now it says that it's 8 meters long. That doesn't really help me. And so I would like to know like what weight this would be the equivalent to in a yarn weight. So that is something that I can definitely do more research on. All of these skeins, and that's what these are called, skeins. All of these skeins came from Benzies, and they are a wool company. They sell wool, and they sell felt, and lots of embroidery, DMC floss, and all of that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in picking up any of these skeins of wool in order to try this technique, Benzies is going to be your go-to. I have really, really enjoyed shopping in there, and they're online as well. And these yummy colors, there's some really, really pretty colors here. So I wanted to give my shout out to Benzies. And of course, you know, I am just dying to cut into this. Now, my friends, on my Instagram this week, I did show the washing of this piece, and this did finally get a little bit of a bath. And so not only has that absolutely cleaned up the exterior fabric that this is sewn on, but it does, it has absolutely cleaned the white wool. Now it's not 100% clean, but this was given two very very gentle, rinsey type baths in a gentle soap called Soak Wash. And you can watch this on my YouTube channel, or sorry, on my Instagram channel. I did a little reel of washing this. Now, my concern when I was washing this was that I did not want to felt this material on the actual Stumpwork, because you could end up matting all of these fibers together. But I have to say that the gentle wash in Soak really did the trick. And I'm going to bring up this so that we can take a look at it. And as you can see, it's still quite small, but it did not felt the fibers, which I think is fantastic. And are we reversed on this? We are. There we go. Okay, so that's right side up. And this, if you peel back the layers inside, that was where it was the cleanest, and it still looks nice and clean. It didn't felt the fabrics, which I really didn't want to do. Now, again, I spent $5 whole on this sample. So it was not that this was precious to me, although it is precious to me because I don't know who made it. And of course, I want to, you know, honor the people who came before me. But I also don't I didn't want the fibers to, basically mat down, because we do want, the raised surface of this work to remain. And I think it came out really, really well. I did agitate just a little bit the background while I washed it. And if you watch that Instagram video, oh my gosh, does the water come out absolutely filthy. And I knew that this was a dirty piece of handwork. It was absolutely like really grimy when I got it. Gosh only knows what they used it for, but this technique survived the washing, which says to me that in other cases this could have been easily laundered or washed and hung outside to dry. So this piece I washed and I just agitated the background, and then I let it air dry, and it looks just as good as it did before. And if you get a second to go over to the Instagram, you will be able to see the before and after. And trust me when I say that the water that came off of this was like brown. It was really brown. So it really smells a million times better than it used to. And I'm really happy with the end result. So very cool. And thanks to Soak, who also reached out to me and said, if I have anything else to launder, I will to reach out to them. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then, so you can see again that washing this did not really take down the pile at all. And so I'm really interested in seeing what happens to the piece now that we are going to cut into the final version here. So I'm actually going to take the hoop off to do the cutting. I don't need as much tension on the fabric as I did, so we can take this off. And as you can see, these pieces here, they're quite rigid, and that's because they do have that metal inside. Now, I will tell you that as I embroidered this, I felt my hand sort of bending these pieces of metal under here. And so that's something to be careful with if you use one of these templates. They do have a bit of flex to them. So you do want to be careful that if you aren't using a hoop, that you're not, the strength of your hand is not bending your template, because then they will not fold up any longer. They will actually be, a little bit off. Yes, Roxanne, it does look brighter. It's everything is popping a little bit brighter on this piece now that it is clean. Okay, so we're gonna cut the star first. Now, if you have not yet noticed, I have also done this circle, and this was part of the pack, and it was quite large. It looks sort of like a washer. Now let's take a look at the back side before we get too far in here. And yeah, these are what my stitches look like. Now, again, knotting this thread is quite large. It is thick. Okay, this is it compared to my hand. So this is thick stuff. It's not thin or skinny. So, and let me find the needle here so you can see it on the needle. It's not a thin thread, and so making a knot, the knot can end up being quite large, but you can see that the method here is to do the first layer, then your second layer sort of very near and or close to your previous one, and then your third layer. And what you're trying to do is to conserve thread by going back and forth only on the top, not on the bottom. So that's why you see my little mistake here. You see a second one there. We did pretty well on the circle. There's only like the knots really that have like gotten tangled into each other. So that's the situation going on here. And there are 3 colors here in the circle. And so the circle I found quite easy and quite meditative. I really enjoyed doing this. So we do have some cutting ahead of us. And from what I can understand, we do need to cut this center. I would like to cut this center out first. I'm using some very sharp snips, and I do want to also snip this very, I need to get under all the layers, but I'm also trying not to scratch or scrape up my template too much. And we start with this center round. And so what we need to do is get under there with our needle or with our scissor, and we're going to try to clip that as best as we can, and we're going to try to make sure we get through all layers. And it looks like I did. So now we're going to go on to the second one. It definitely feels very unusual to clip into the work. It really is feels strange. So yeah, like, you know, you spent all this time doing the embroidery and now you're just going to like snip into it. Feels very, very odd. So I am also getting under there and trying to make sure I'm clipping all the way down to the end there and all the way down to the bottom row. I can feel it under there. And I'm also, again, this is going to be one of those things where if you end up nicking your template, I mean, obviously the template is supposed to do what it's supposed to do. And so we're just making sure that we're getting through all of that. I don't want to scratch up my template, but there you go. We are starting to see the layers starting to peek through, so that's kind of exciting. And let's get that under there. And here is our last one. All right, and so that is the center all cut away. And we can use our fingers to sort of feel under there to see if we got them all and if we haven't. All right, but look at that little poof, how it has started. I think that's so cool. And then what I didn't realize is that the other side will end up laying down into each of the petals, which is kind of neat. So now comes cutting under one of these arms. And when I was doing my stitching, I very purposefully tried to make sure that that very last stitch was something that I could get underneath. And so quite often in this last stitch here, as I was using my needle, I would come back and pull up that last stitch just slightly so that I knew I could get my needle in there. And so right now I have the needle right up against the template. I can feel it sliding there against the metal of the template. So let's take a look at getting that under there. And we're going to just start by clipping the very end here. This is very nervous for me because, you know, it was not like it was a ton of work, but it's still, you know, you're cutting into stitches that you just made. And those of you that do embroidery and what they call turkey work, I'm sure that you get that same feeling when you cut into your stitches in order to make the puff. Now, you don't want to lift up with your scissors very much because you'll get a little pull like that just happened right there. So we don't want to pull up with the scissors. We just want to slide the scissor along the template and get it underneath those stitches. We know we're underneath those stitches, and we just slice up to the end here, and we want to make sure that we get all the last little stitches. And this is where we can then separate this and start to see what happened underneath there. Okay, so all right, so that's the first one. And I can hear my my water alarms going off. Isn't that fun? We've had so much rain that we've had flash flooding warnings. So fun times for all of us. Now, I'm laughing because that's quite a look there. Ooh, now that's something to be careful of. I don't know if you just saw what I did there, but as I was cutting, I kept moving my scissors forward, and as I was lifting, you can see if I lift my scissors how I'm going to pull those stitches up. So you want to be sure that you slide your scissors in, cut, and then back out, because if you do cut and lift up those stitches, you have a tendency to pull them out of shape. So I don't want to do that. I'm finding the colors here quite entertaining. They are not at all what I expected. So go figure. But we can see now that the metal of the template is exposed. And you do, ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera. We do want to look under here and make sure that all of those stitches have been trimmed, that none of them are going to keep the template from popping back out. Okay, so now here's the next petal. And we do have I can feel the metal underneath the scissor. So that's something that you're going to want to keep on the lookout for, is that as your scissor is sliding under there, you just want to make sure that the tips of your scissors aren't gouging your template, unless you don't care. I care because these templates were really expensive. So that's why I care. But yeah. So that's something that you're going to want to double, triple check yourself on. And so, yeah, there we go. And there's the last bit. Now, these last few stitches here at the center, they seem to be the most difficult to clip, and they seem like they're also the most difficult to make sure that the piece is released from. So that's something to keep in mind. This is really cool, and this is turning out way better than I thought it was, and the tapestry wool just looks so amazing. And this has been a good little experiment for not just for this show, because this is something that, from my understanding, is not a technique that's used, but in German and Amish areas, this was very well used and known through the 1930s. And then it falls out of favor, but there are many antique Amish Stumpwork blankets that have been offered on eBay and things like that, using these sort of puffy stars, these puffy circles and stars. And so they're quite popular on those. And you know, this is just really, it's really, really cool. Yeah, there we go. And we're getting that. We have to get the very first stitch cut away. We don't want that first stitch to be be trapped in there. And when I was making the stitches, I was trying very hard to make sure that that end of the template was able to be reached into there. So now this one, it feels tighter than the others, and I feel like that's something that as you stitch, you're going to discover that you end up having more tension on one petal of this sort of flower thing than others, and that is something that you'll have to practice to make sure that you get that tension to remain the same, because as you cut down, it feels almost like when you crack open a geode and you have all those really cool colors. I feel like that's what's this is doing here. And so yeah, that's really cool. It's really neat to go through, and we're just making sure we're getting that last layer. Now again, we can go through and just double check the fibers before we pull out the last template, just to make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to, and you know, and we're getting the shape that we want. But also, like, again, I was saying, here's that very first beginning, that tip of the petal. We want to make sure that our scissor goes completely under there and under next to that template. Actually, like, I could feel the tip of the metal template in there. So we're trying to get, yeah, because we want the scissor to go under and feel and like sort of run along the metal of the template. And we want it to do the work. Now, I'm not quite there yet. It was easy on all the others, but not on this one. So there we go. There we go. All right. Now I feel like we're running along the end of the template. Sort of. I'm sure I'm putting a scratch on it, but can't really do much about that at this point. And there's, no, I don't think I'm all the way down through it. There we go. Oh yeah, I can still trim it away. There we go. Yep, now I got it. Now, don't worry if it looks like one of your strands is longer than the others. Like if you're like, oh no, that one's longer, it's going to be okay, because what's going to happen is you will be able to sort of give your stump work a little haircut if you need to. Okay, so we are done cutting all of the template petals. And now it is a matter of lifting out our template out of the center here and making sure that there are no strands keeping it from coming out. And we just have to look, and it looks like there's one right there. I don't know if you can see that. Right there, you can sort of see it in the reflection. But there's one right there, and we need to trim that one. So I'm actually going to switch to a smaller scissor, something with really, really tiny needle nose, so that we can really get in there and get under that thread, because otherwise this will not lift out. And you have to lift apart the threads to see, and there's one right there that's not going to lift out. We also need to do that on the center and make sure that all of those are clipped. And it looks like this is now ready on this side to come out. So now you can see I'm pulling away the template, and we can see where there are little stragglers that are going to keep us from pulling this out. And now we have to do the same on this other side, and it just peels away so nicely, but you end up having like one or two little stragglers, and you don't want to stretch those threads, so you want to just give them a little trim. We've got this one here, and I'm noticing that they're sort of hiding here in the fold of the metal template. So let's flip this around so we can get at this side. And we do have, it's still trapped in there. So we're not quite out of the woods. We have this little strand here. And this side, oh, now here, right here on the tip of the you can see that right there is definitely trapping the template. So we do need to clip that. And then we take a look to see if there's any more. And we lift up that template like this. And it looks like it's mostly out except for right here. So you're going to just want to be gentle with the work, with your template. In addition, you don't want to, totally scratch up your template, or dull your scissors in the process too. It's probably, something that your scissors will not love you for. But we've got all of the pieces out, it looks like, except for this one right here. There we go. And you can still see the, the bridge. That will indicate to you, you're like, uh-oh, I can't pull that out. It's because there's still some strands there holding it down. Now, it looks like we've got that side, and it looks like we're going to be able to get this side. The main thing now holding this template on is the pom-pom through the center. And so we're going to sort of gently pull it, and we're not going to want to, stretch it out too much, but just giving this a little floof, and wow, I love it. I love it. It is very, very cool. It is definitely along the lines of what I thought. You can sort of keep the star somewhat together if you like, or you can continue to shape and trim this, but I think I'm going to leave it how it is. I do think that some of the height here on the sides come from being able to, build up those layers, those stitches over and over again. Sylvia, it is satisfying. It is so cool to do this cut. It was not at all how I expected. So I thought that was really, really neat. Now, it does look really good for never having done or tried this technique before, and truly only being able to figure it out by looking at this sample piece. I think we're not too far off. Again, we're using a different material on this than the previous piece. So theirs looks like they have come back in with many, many stitches of a very finer type of yarn. So we do have that difference going for us. But, if I, give this a little floof, I feel like we look very similar to to that. So it is, so Andrea's asking, is it secure on the back? Well, I mean, these are, I mean, I guess if I wanted to pull one of these out, I could. But they are quite densely packed and stitched in amongst each other. And that is the exact same method that the this original piece has used. So there is no knotting that's happening on the original, and there's no knotting that's happening, you know, along here, except where you have your beginnings and your ends. So they have not knotted their piece, and I have not knotted this either, other than you can see my beginnings and my ends, which are not nearly as nicely stitched as someone who did this 1930s. So so it does feel secure. So that part is really cool. Sylvia, you made a tufted cuff for a coat. Everyone wanted to touch it. I can totally see that. This feels very soft, very comforting. And as a design element on the quilt, or on an art quilt, even, this I think would be extremely lovely. It's called Perseverance. I agree. I think, you know, from a volume standpoint, you can see my volume compared to their volume. You know, I think that they got a higher build up because they used more stitches. So that is something that's very cool. Martha wants to know, where did I get the templates? These templates were from a collection from the UK. And so these are very old. I want to say that these templates are from the 1890s to about 1920s. And I am doing research on the patent. There is a patent on the largest one. Here it says patent, and it has a patent number. So I'm going to be looking into that to see if, you know, these are anything that can be reproduced. So we still have this circle version to try, and so I am, in addition to all of this, I'm very excited about snipping into that little guy. And so for this one, unlike this where the star, you can still see the star on the back, you can still place your template over it and realize that that's the exact same size that this template began as. This circle is almost like a giant washer, a very thin washer, but a giant washer. So to cut into this, you're going to get a couple different things. One, you're going to get a different cut if you cut closer to the edge versus the center or straight down the middle. Personally, I would like to cut straight down the middle to see what happens to it. But looking at the original, I'm super stoked. Like that really, it's hard to believe that this big fat template came out of there, but it did. So now we're going to cut into this, and I do want it to go straight down the middle. Now, unlike these petals, there's an easy start with the petals, right? Because you know exactly where you're going to start in and start cutting. With the circle, you have no real beginning or end. And I'm sure that if I added more colors to this, that I would get a better fluff. So I just stopped at 3 colors, but you could add more colors depending on what you're trying to do. So I'm just going to go straight down into the template until I feel the metal, and then I'm going to try to lift underneath and I'm going to try to cut it straight in half. And it feels super scary. I'm not going to lie to you. Like that first cut, you're just like, am I doing it right? I don't know. I just spent an hour cutting, sewing over this template. So am I doing it right? The answer is yes. And you want to make sure that you get down all the way to the template itself. And I can tell I'm already not doing that. So you want to just get like straight down, straight down. And I'm taking small cuts of, just a few pieces of yarn at a time. I'm not trying to get a whole lot of thread onto my scissor. I'm just trying to get a few at a time. And I'm also trying not to, you have to make sure that you turn it properly. So there's that as well. And I can already know that I'm not all the way down under there. Now it is definitely interesting already. So, I also want to make sure that I am not cutting on an angle. For some of these, I want to make sure I'm still cutting straight up and down or straight down the middle. I don't want to angle it in any way. So this is the sorority version of chug, chug, chug. You guys are chanting, cut, cut, cut. Yeah, I agree. It's like, get in there. We want to see what it looks like at the end. Like, hurry up, Cheryl. I totally understand. And like I said, I'm trying to make sure that I get all of those threads cut, or we won't be able to get that template out. And it's definitely different. The circle is a little bit harder to get out. I can already tell that is a little bit more difficult, but the colors, they're so neat. And oh my gosh, like the tapestry wool comes in so many colors that part will be a lot of fun in and of itself, just coming up with all the colors. And I did put it on a light gray felt. This is not a wool felt. This is a poly felt. This is a non wool felt. So I just picked whatever they had, and this was a nice light gray, which I felt was like a very modern color. So we're getting to almost to this, back to the beginning here. This is a lot harder, and I wonder if it's because I sewed it tighter than the original. That's entirely possible. So, one of the things to keep in mind is that beginning layer, you're not going to want to sew down really, really tightly to the template. I mean, yes, you want to keep your template on, but that first layer, if it's too tight, you won't be able to get your scissor under there. So we are almost all the way around, and I can just tell that we have not snipped through all the layers. So we're going to come back with the tinier scissor, and that's going to help me trim all the way down to the metal. Now my scissor is sort of skimming along the metal, and you can start to see the template where it's coming out. And oh, this is so cool. I'm very happy with this one being so, I mean, I've never tried one of these circles before. I'm going to go back this way. And again, if you, depending on which way you cut, you would get longer pieces on the center or the ends here. Oop, there we go. It's, you can just tell that it's sort of still trapped under there. You can feel that the metal template won't lift out, and that's a good indication that you have some trimming to do in there. All right, so now let's see if we can get this out. And it should just lift. And oh, we got, you can tell that there's just these little threads keeping him from popping out of there. And there we go. So let's fluff that a little bit. Oh, how cute is that? So one of the things I can already say about this technique is that if you had added another, like continued to add layers to this, that you would end up being able to completely close that center hole. And so then also this would be quite large. Sylvia says the circle vibe is very sea anemone, and it would be great for an underwater collage. That would be great for all kinds of circle projects. Now, here's to show you the size difference in these templates versus the finished product. Okay, and so what you're going to have to do is also realize that there is a spread factor that happens when you're doing this technique, that the threads are going to expand and lay down, and that expansion creates even a larger size than you may initially wish for, especially with the circle. Okay, because that was the original size of the circle, but you're getting, an additional, 1/4 inch on either side. So you could end up having that large, this size circle. You want to at least think that it will be a 1/2 inch larger, 1/4 inch on all sides. So Sylvia is saying we could add a cluster of seed beads to the center, adding another tactile element. Absolutely. I also think that you could add beads or additional texture here on the flowers. Now, the templates came with other, other things. And so one of the things is there are individual petals that you could create out of the leaves, and so you could just sew over one leaf. They also came with individual leaves, and so you could create a beautiful flower scene with these dimensional things. And I would love to then quilt the background here in order to make this design. I could take some green and do a chain stitch to create stems. So the possibilities here for creating an art quilt element is really, really high. You have a lot of different techniques here to try and also to play with. You also have the potential to cut this on like small zigzags in order to get just a little bit of a different shape here with the flower. That could be something to play with here as well, because that's not something that I have seen in any of these originals. But obviously the color placement, what you get in the center is what you stitch first. What you get on the exterior is what you stitch last. So anytime you're trying to build your colors, you're going to want to stitch whatever you want first. And here's like a crazy dark gray. Then you could add, some red. And if you wanted to go all the way up to pink, that is fine. It's just you have to remember that, the red would, or the gray would be the interior, the red would be the center, and then on as you added your layers. And that may not be incredibly obvious at first, but it is quite easy to do with the templates that were available. And finding these has proved a little difficult, but I am pretty excited. Now, the larger one, okay, as you can see here, Martha, you are not wrong, and I agree. It's definitely part of the show because it may or may not make an appearance in a new heirloom box. Like I said, I'm looking into this patent. So this particular template, you will see here that it folds up, okay? But when you expand it, you're only seeing these 3 on this side to be cut out. And that's because what they would do, and I have seen some examples of this, is this would be a somewhat Pennsylvania Dutch style tulip. Okay, so you would have just these 3 done. You would not sew over the bottom. You would only sew over the top, and you would sew again, same method. You would do all 3, and you would sew over each one. From the center here, you would not sew the whole round, although you could in order to get that perfect little puff. I think that I probably would sew over the center, but you would do this and sew over each petal, and then very much like the circle, you would come along here and snip, and it would just be these 3 as a tulip shape. And so I think that would be also extremely successful in giving you additional shape for, from the original. And you would have that sort of 3 petal, and then you would be able to do, leaves and stems and all sorts of really beautiful designs. I just think that, this one, I had never seen these tools before. I had seen some vintage examples, was able to get my hands on this one for about $5 on eBay. If you see that curving there, that is going to be from how much stitching you do, and getting this to stay upright. Again, I feel like that's also part of what material you use. And I do love how this is sort of fluffing up and looking with the tapestry wool. These skeins were really inexpensive. They were not, I think they were $1.30 a piece. So from a standpoint of purchasing them and trying this technique out, that part is inexpensive. The most expensive part will be acquiring vintage templates like these. And of course, I'll be looking into that for you as well. So really a lot of fun. This is German Tuftwork, also known as Amish Stumpwork, and it is really satisfying to cut into. I have to admit that that was a lot more nerve-wracking at first. Do you then felt the wool? You absolutely could. I did not, because the original was not felted, and so I'm keeping that unfelted. So again, that's going to be up to you. I do think that that's something that will be subjective, but I do love sort of everything that's happening with it, and if it does end up felting, I'm sure that will be just fine for me. I think if I washed it, it would absolutely felt. But then you might get more dimension because these channels in here are quite deep. And so that is a really interesting side effect. Again, you're going to want to visit Benzies for the wool. They were the ones that were able to sell me the skeins of tapestry wool. Don't forget that we are live here every Tuesday at noon, and I am very excited about showing you all kinds of other heirloom sewing techniques and some vintage tools here and there. So please, please, please make sure that you share this video, tell your friends, and I will absolutely see all of you next week. Take care, stay safe, and see you next Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.